Let's take a step back and look at this carefully, because the Washington draw was released on Saturday night. And within 60 minutes, nearly every tennis account with a following was posting the same headline, recycling the same narrative, chasing the same story. Eala could face defending champion Leylah Fernandez. That's the matchup. That's the collision everyone wants to talk about. That's the headline being packaged and sold across social media platforms as if the tournament has already written itself. But here is what those accounts are not telling you. The most dangerous moment in Eala's entire Washington campaign is not the potential Fernandez showdown. It is not the quarterfinals. It is not some distant stage of the bracket where seeds collide and storylines culminate. The most dangerous moment arrives in round one. The very first match. The first time she walks onto that hard court and faces an opponent across the net. And the name printed opposite hers in that opening round slot is one that the breathless Fernandez previews have almost entirely ignored. We need to have a very serious and very honest conversation about what this draw actually means, because the surface-level narrative being pushed right now does not capture the full picture. It does not capture the pressure. It does not capture the history. And it certainly does not capture the number that defines everything Eala does between now and the end of August. That number is 70. 70 ranking points. That is the total Eala collected across the entire North American hard court swing last year. Washington, Toronto, Cincinnati, and the U.S. Open combined. Just 70 points. Before we go anywhere near the Fernandez conversation, before we break down the draw round by round, we have to understand what that number means and why it changes the entire framework of how we should be watching Eala compete this week. To understand it properly, you have to understand how the tennis ranking system actually functions, because it operates in a way that is far more punishing than most casual fans realize. Every player arrives at a tournament carrying the weight of what they earned at that same event 12 months earlier. Those points sit on their shoulders for the duration of the week. And the harsh reality is this: they must earn those points all over again simply to maintain their current position. Not to climb, not to improve, just to stay exactly where they are. Fail to match last year's performance and the ranking drops, automatically and immediately, as those old points are removed from the calculation. Now look at what that means for the two players at the center of this story. Leylah Fernandez arrives in Washington carrying 500 ranking points in that metaphorical backpack because she won the title here last year. She became the first Canadian player to lift the Washington Trophy, and those 500 points have been sitting inside her ranking total ever since. Every round she fails to reach this week, every exit that falls short of last year's run costs her directly. Those points do not get replaced, they evaporate. And when they go, the ranking number beside her name rises accordingly. Eala's situation could not be more different. Last summer derailed almost immediately. She lost in the opening round in Toronto, then a left shoulder injury pulled her off the tour entirely. She played only 2 tour-level events during the entire North American swing and managed just a second-round appearance at the U.S. Open before disappearing from competition. The total damage to her ranking from that stretch was minimal because there was barely any performance to generate points in the first place. 70 points collected across the whole swing. That is almost nothing. And here is why that matters so profoundly. The version of Eala stepping onto the court in Washington this week has almost no ranking floor beneath her feet. There is virtually nothing to defend. Every match she wins adds to her total in a way that is pure, clean progress with no offset. Every victory this week builds her ranking without the counterbalance of expiring points dragging the number in the opposite direction. She is walking into this tournament as one of the freest players in the entire draw, from a ranking mathematics perspective. While Fernandez is under enormous pressure to protect what she earned, Eala is operating with the kind of freedom that allows a player to compete without the burden of preservation weighing on every point. But none of that freedom changes the identity of the opponent standing in her path on Monday. The Mubadala City DC Open is a WTA 500 event held at the William H. G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center from July 27th through August 2nd. The singles champion earns prize money of $252,000, but the financial reward is not the primary reason the world's best players assemble in Washington every summer. This tournament is the gateway. It opens the door to the North American hardcourt season, which flows through Toronto, then Cincinnati, and ultimately delivers every player to Flushing Meadows and the U.S. Open. The form a player builds in Washington has a documented tendency to carry through that entire stretch. What you discover here, you take with you. This year's field reflects that significance. Jessica Pegula is the top seed. Aryna Sabalenka, Naomi Osaka, and Diana Schneider follow, all four receiving first-round byes. Anna Kalinskaya, Madison Keys, Leylah Fernandez, and Emma Navarro complete the 8 seeded players in the draw. Read those names and then notice what is absent. Alex Eala, ranked a career-high world number 28 after her breakthrough run at Wimbledon, is not among the seeds. Not because her ranking doesn't reflect genuine achievement, but because this tournament protects only 8 players, and when names like Pegula, Osaka, and Keys all enter the same field, those 8 spots disappear with extraordinary speed. Being unseeded is not a minor administrative detail. It is a structural disadvantage with real consequences, because seeding provides protection. It ensures that the highest-ranked opponents cannot appear in your section of the draw during the early rounds. Without that protection, the bracket becomes a completely open field where the computer can place almost any player directly in your path from the very first match. That is exactly what happened to Alex Eala. Her first-round opponent is Zheng Qinwen, the Olympic gold medalist. Read that again, because the significance of it has not fully penetrated the conversation. The player who stood on the podium at the Paris Olympics and received gold in women's singles tennis is in this draw. She entered as a wild card, which means she received an invitation into the main draw without a seeded position and without a designated location in the bracket. She became a free-moving piece, capable of landing anywhere. Most of the time, when a wild card enters a tournament, it is a promising teenager or a local fan favorite with limited tour experience. Sometimes it is an Olympic champion who spent months rebuilding her ranking after injuries disrupted her season and who arrives with almost nothing to defend, enormous motivation to prove herself, and the complete freedom that comes from having no seeding to protect. Zheng Qinwen is the second scenario. She has spent much of this season working her way back from physical setbacks. That process creates a specific and uniquely threatening competitive profile. She arrives in Washington with few ranking points on the line, no seed to preserve, and no external pressure guiding her decision-making during matches. In many ways, she is entering this tournament in almost the same mental state as Alex Eala herself: hungry, motivated, unburdened. Playing with a freedom that ranked and seeded players rarely experience. 2 players with almost nothing to lose, meeting in the opening round of a significant tournament on a surface neither has competed on recently. That is not a routine first-round assignment. That is a collision between 2 competitors who are both desperate to build momentum and both willing to take risks to get it. And to fully understand what Monday's match means, you have to go back to September 28, 2023, the Asian Games semifinal in Hangzhou. At that moment, Alex Eala was 18 years old and ranked world number 190. Across the net stood Zheng Qinwen, ranked 23rd in the world and considered the overwhelming favorite by every reasonable measure. The opening set removed any ambiguity about the gap between them. Zheng stormed through it 6-1, clinical, dominant. The match appeared to be reaching its conclusion before it had properly begun. Early in the second set, Eala fell behind 2-5. She was 1 game from elimination, facing a player ranked 167 places above her, while fans across the Philippines stayed awake into the early hours of the morning to watch. Everything pointed toward a straightforward conclusion. Then everything changed. Eala saved 1 match point, then another, then another. She refused to concede the inevitable and began clawing back game by game. The score moved from 2-5 all the way to 5-5. She forced a tiebreak and won it 7-5, pushing the match into a deciding third set and announcing in the clearest possible terms that she was capable of competing at a level nobody had yet required her to prove. In the deciding set, Eala broke serve early and moved ahead 3-1. For nearly 20 minutes, the Philippines stood on the threshold of something that had not happened since 1962, an Asian Games tennis gold medal. 61 years of waiting compressed into a handful of games on a court in Hangzhou. But the physical cost of that second set comeback eventually presented its invoice. The energy she had spent surviving what should have been a loss came due in the third set. Zheng regained control, won the final set 6-3, and advanced to the gold medal match. Eala settled for bronze. She walked off the court having lost on the scoreboard, but she walked off as a fundamentally different player from the one who had walked onto it. Now here is the question that matters as we approach Monday. In 2023, Eala was 18 years old, ranked 190 in the world, and carrying absolutely zero external pressure into that match. Now she is 21, ranked a career-high 28, and arriving in Washington just weeks after defeating the defending Wimbledon champion on center court. How much does that previous meeting actually matter? The argument that it matters less than people think rests on the obvious. Eala is a dramatically stronger player today. Her serve has developed, she is more aggressive in the opening exchanges of rallies, and perhaps most significantly, she has learned how to close matches. 2 years ago, her energy faded at critical junctures. This season, she has repeatedly come back from a set down and converted pressure-filled tiebreaks that would previously have slipped away from her. But the counter-argument is harder to dismiss. Zheng Qinwen has never lost to Eala, not once, and the dynamics of Monday's match have inverted completely compared to Hangzhou. In 2023, Eala was the fearless underdog with nothing to lose and everything to discover. On Monday, she is the higher-ranked player, coming off the most significant stretch of her career, with an entire nation expecting another statement performance. Pressure does not disappear as a player improves. It simply migrates to a different location. There is also a detail that makes this matchup genuinely unpredictable in a way that pure ranking comparisons cannot resolve. Their previous meaningful meeting came at the Asian Games. Before that, they faced each other as juniors. Monday will be the first time Eala and Zheng Qinwen have met on the WTA Tour. There is no tour-level head-to-head record. There is no established pattern at this level of competition. Both players have transformed since they last shared a court. Both arrive in Washington after extended breaks from competitive action. Nobody truly knows what this match will look like when the first ball is struck. Not the analysts, not the commentators, and honestly, not even the players themselves. That is what makes it so compelling and so uncomfortable. This is supposed to be the opening round, the stage where tournaments ease players gently into the competition before the real tests arrive later in the week. Instead, Eala's draw has placed a blockbuster-caliber matchup at the very beginning, with no comfortable opener to find her footing on a hard court she has not competed on since March. And then, if she survives that challenge, the next opponent potentially waiting for her is not unfamiliar: Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, the player the entire online tennis world assumed would be the headline of Eala's week from the moment the draw was released. But before we arrive at that potential matchup, there is a layer to the Fernandez story that almost no preview has addressed with the attention it deserves. Fernandez represents Canada. She famously reached the 2021 U.S. Open final at just 18 years old, captivating the New York crowd with a run that defied every expectation. Last year, she became Washington's champion. But there is something else. Her mother is Filipino-Canadian, which means that if Fernandez gets past Magda Linette in her opening match, and if Eala overcomes Zheng Qinwen, the showdown that follows will not simply be the Philippines against Canada. It will be two women with Filipino heritage standing across the net from each other on American soil, each carrying a different flag, but sharing part of the same identity and the same cultural story. That is one of the most genuinely compelling storylines in this entire tournament, and it is barely being discussed. There is another detail that most previews have missed entirely. This potential Eala Fernandez meeting would not be a first. They have already played this year. Their meeting came in Stuttgart on clay, where Fernandez defeated Eala in the round of 32. That result completely reframes the narrative. This is not the first chapter of an emerging rivalry being written in Washington. It is a rematch, and Eala enters it as the player with something to prove and a score to settle. Step back and look at the full picture of what this draw is asking Eala to do. To reach the quarterfinals in Washington, she will, in all likelihood, need to defeat an Olympic gold medalist in round 1, and then follow that by overcoming the defending tournament champion in round 2. Both matches on a hard court she has not played since March. Both against opponents who present completely different challenges. Both with enormous ranking and historical implications attached to the outcome. It is like sitting down for the most important exam of your academic career and discovering that the two hardest questions have been placed first, with no warm-up, no gradual escalation, and no margin for a slow start. But here is what makes this more than just a test of Eala's ability. It is also the most important month of her career from a historical standpoint. August 24th is the seeding cutoff date for the U.S. Open. Eala currently sits around number 29 on the entry list. If she remains inside the world's top 32 by that date, she will become the first Filipina in history to earn a U.S. Open singles seed. She has 3 tournaments to protect that position, with only a handful of ranking places separating her from a milestone that her country has never seen. Every match this week matters beyond the scoreboard in Washington. Every victory or defeat ripples directly toward that August 24th deadline. That is the real scoreboard operating in the background of every point she plays this summer. Not trophies, not headlines. One critical cutoff date and the historical weight of what reaching it would mean. Meanwhile, Fernandez is not entering this week from a position of comfort either. When the live rankings temporarily removed her Washington points earlier this month during a routine update, she dropped from world number 25 to number 34. 9 places. Gone, temporarily because of a spreadsheet adjustment. That is the magnitude of what she is defending. 500 points is not an abstraction. It is the difference between being a comfortable top 25 player and scrambling to protect a position inside the top 35. The pressure running through this draw is real, it is measurable, and it is flowing in multiple directions simultaneously. Eala lands in Washington at a career-high ranking, coming off Wimbledon moments that announced her arrival at the highest level, carrying the hopes of an entire nation, chasing a historic seeding milestone, and facing an Olympic gold medalist in the very first round before anyone outside of tennis Twitter has finished reading the draw. This is not just a tournament preview. This is a stress test, and it starts on Monday.